Hello, everybody, and thank you for attending our session about the optimization of Microsoft Teams performance and overall Office 65 environment. So today, I will show you how to ensure optimal Microsoft Teams services quality for your user, whether they are working at the office or from home. My name is Jean-François Piot, and I'm responsible for the strategic partnership at GSX. It's a pleasure to present you this session today. So, for an introduction, you know that the last few months, we have seen a surge really in Microsoft Teams deployment and active usage. It's now more than 110 million active daily users on the Microsoft Teams platform. Whether it's used for chat, collaboration, or voice, Teams features have been largely deployed within the remote working world. With users starting to go back to the office, enterprise IT must now be prepared to support this new traffic at the location of their user. And we are entering now in a hybrid workforce world where a lot of users will alternate the work at the office and work from home. And that means that the IT must be prepared for this scenario. With a lot of workers staying remote, but potentially coming from time to the office, the strain on the network fluctuates a lot. And that's why it's mandatory to optimize your route to the cloud to ensure Microsoft Teams and overall Office 65 service quality. So just a few words before we jump into the data that I really want to show you. First, GSX, we are specialists in synthetic transaction for Office 65 and hybrid Microsoft environment. And our tool works with small Windows services that are running on Windows machine without any impact on the network that are testing continuously the Office 365 workloads, Teams, of course, included, to provide 24/7 performance data from anywhere all the robots are at your office or on user machines if you want. All data that we will see today are generated by these probes. And usually, we are dealing with enterprises that want to test the Office 65 service quality delivered to their critical sites. But of course, because of the situation, more and more ask us if we could use our technology to help remote workers to get better performance as well. And we will see how to face this challenge of hybrid workers today. So let's jump in the infrastructure part and how to improve your overall infrastructure for a better Microsoft Teams service quality. So if you have been on Microsoft 365 documentation for network connectivity, for example, you may have already seen this chart. It is just a reminder that despite the large acceleration in cloud adoption, most of the enterprise IT are still using this architecture. And this architecture has remote offices using MPLS to connect to the data center or even the remote worker using VPN, backhauling the traffic to the data center before egressing to Internet and Office 65. And this goes against Microsoft recommendation to provide a better performance to your Microsoft 65 user. And it's not only about Microsoft, it will be true on every SaaS services. So let's see now how you can act on this infrastructure to improve your hybrid worker experience. To make a long story short, Microsoft recommends a direct connection between your user and the Office 65 data center. And it would be very simple to do that if there was no security concern. But of course, there are security concerns. And that's why Microsoft worked hard on two important points. The first one is really to reduce the number of endpoints and IPs that are critical for performance. And the second one is to onboard state-of-the-art security on those endpoints in order to allow direct traffic from the users. The critical endpoints are now down to 4 URL and a few IPs that you can see here, and they are called optimized. And they concentrate almost 80% of the traffic of Office 65. And Microsoft has promised to keep them stable, and that's very, very important. Moreover, now you have Microsoft 365 that handles directly a lot of security features like DLP, conditional access policies, MFA, antivirus, anti-malware, etc. So you don't have to duplicate them and you can trust these endpoints. You can find all this documentation online on the Microsoft website. Now that we have identified what to differentiate, so the different URL and endpoint that you have to differentiate, you should allow your remote offices and users to connect directly to the secure endpoint provided by Microsoft. For your remote worker, you should allow their VPN to send the optimized traffic direct out the user local internet connection. to access the nearest Office 65 service front door. And for that, you can do split tunneling. There's a lot of documentation about that. So the optimized traffic with that is sent out directly to Office 65, while the rest of the traffic still goes to the normal route to your data center. So really, Microsoft has created a lot of documentation about that recently during the pandemic time, and there's really every resources you need in order to achieve this recommendation. So now the question is, how does it really affect the end user experience between a VPN or not a VPN? Does it really matter? And for that, I mean, we have done some tests, and I will show you the result right here. So here's Power BI, and as I explained at the beginning of this webinar, basically our robots are testing Office 65 the whole time, and then they provide data real time that we will see later on, and historical on Power BI. Here it's the top level dashboard. It's basically a dashboard that shows you if you have issues in your different location and your overall achievement in terms of performance for your entire company for Microsoft 365 services. We'll come back to that a bit later. But now what we want to check is what's the difference for Teams, and especially here, let's talk about Team Voice. What's the difference between going through VPN or through MPLS, or not going through, or going direct, basically. And that's what we did. So we, in Singapore, put two robots, one going through the MPLS, another one going direct to the nearest Office 65 front door, and the one going to MPLS connect with MPLS to Nice and access the Office 65 tenant that is in Europe. So what we have seen. Right here, if I focus on the mean opinion score is basically, when you rate your call on Teams from 1 star to 5 star, that's the mean opinion score. And when you do monitoring, basically you can recreate that mean opinion score based on a formula that integrates plenty of network parameters. So here, what we can see is that the mean opinion score, so the higher score it is, the better it is. And you absolutely want to have that score above 4, because under 4, you have a lot of problem. So what you see is that the MPLS one is really regularly has issues. Regularly, it comes down to down 4. And of course, the one connected directly sometimes have issues. Everybody has issue. But what you have to understand is there a pattern where really the MPLS is worse than the direct traffic? And you can see that here. I mean, it's obvious. There's way more spikes going down than the direct traffic. And everywhere we only see the orange part, because the orange part is always worse. So we know here that in terms of performance, in terms of call, service quality, the MPLS is not as good as the direct traffic. And we can see as well here, like there's a constant more packet loss, the round trip time has a lot of issues too, and all of that makes basically the experience of Microsoft Teams voice not as good using MPLS than using the direct access to the nearest front door. So let's continue. Other things you have to check. The VPN. We spoke about VPN. You have to make sure that your VPN is sized for your fluctuation, for the fluctuation of your population going to the office. And at first, check your VPN licenses. You might already know, but it's always a good reminder that your VPN license relies on the number of concurrent users. So you need to make sure you always have enough licenses for your remote workforce. And as it's fluctuating, it's even more difficult. So, but that's very a point that it's a stupid point, but a very important point. So you also need to take a careful look at your firewall to make sure they can handle the load, but only from a hardware perspective. And finally, the DHCP is also under stress, because when you connect to a VPN, you are given an IP address, and that number is limited by the DHCP. So you need to make sure that your DHCP can assign as many addresses as you have concurrent VPN user. So let's see other important things to do. The router, I mean, internet routing. you should do a health check of your router for Office 65, basically in your different location. It's one of the most common single point of failure. But if your router is more than 3 to 5 years old, I mean, it's something that you should really check because it probably does not support the latest version of the Wi-Fi. For example, a lot of them are still on G, even if AC is the latest version and is way better. And also, some old routers, they do not give access to, for example, the different 5G or 2.4G bands. So you need to check that to make sure that your user and also your VIP have access to this kind of feature. And of course, having a faster processor usually improves the connection performance. So we had that kind of issue in Geneva, and I will show you that right here. So here we saw, come back on the top level dashboard, but here we see directly that, so blue is Teams, okay, and Geneva has a lot of issue with Teams. I mean, half of their problem are Teams issue. So if I go to Geneva here now, what we see two different robots again, and there's one on the desktop and there's one that is on a laptop user, and both are working in Geneva. And what we see is that, well, basically, the router, when has a lot of issues. You see that, I mean, the connection has a lot of issues. So you see the MOS like going down to zero again and again and again. I mean, it's like very important. Like the quality of the calls is really bad here. And we have seen that it's only happening to Geneva. So probably there's a local, something local that is happening there that makes the quality of the call that bad. And you can see that the packet loss are bursting, the degradation average is horrible, the RTT is as well very bad. So obviously there's really something that is sometimes working, sometimes not, sometimes working, sometimes not, and not working. And we don't know exactly what it is, but usually when you have these kind of things that are on, off, only on a local, station or on a local localization, then you should really check basically the locality. And that's what we did. And of course, what happened is that the router in Geneva is dying, and sometimes basically do not allow traffic, sometimes yes, I mean, is old. And now we are changing it. And so I hope that the connection to Teams at the office will be better. So the last point is, of course, the DNS. So that's another point. The DNS location and performance are also important. Also, it's mostly important for your end user. Because sometimes ISP DNS are less robust than public one, for example, like Google, but you need to check where they are because you don't want your user to connect to a DNS in San Francisco if your users are in Paris. So you need to check where they are. Also, if you only speak about Teams, doesn't really matter because Teams is using unicast, but DNS has a lot of impact on Exchange, for example, and other workload. So you can check DNS resolution with PowerShell or the Microsoft connectivity tools. And what is important is to make sure that your DNS resolution is made close to your remote offices or your user. And the purpose is really to shorten the route to the cloud and improve the overall services. So last point on the infrastructure, before going to the remote user part, you should make sure that you have implemented the quality of service protocol. Because your router can really differentiate the traffic in order to always keep a decent share of bandwidth for voice and conferencing. And we did the test with our robot user last year, and we could see a real impact on that. And the solution is imperfect because sometimes you do not control, for example, if your ISP has implemented the quality of service, especially for the remote user, but still, it's something that will improve the quality of service of your video call or your voice call. You really prioritize the traffic of these calls over anything else. And if you speak for a remote user, a lot of newer router allow as well any user that router that you have at home allow to differentiate traffic between a device and another one. So it means that you can have the device where you work that will always be prioritized over the TV, over the tablet of the kids or anything else. So the device which you are working will always have the better bandwidth to do calls and to work from home. So that's kind of cool, but for that, again, you need to have a good router. So speaking about that, let's see other tips for the remote worker. The first things, of course, is to use the Teams rich client. That's important. There's not a lot of documentation that explain really a difference in terms of performance. That's more feedback that we had from our customers. Usually it's more stable. And anyway, if you want to use Teams with full feature, it's way nicer to do it on the rich client than on the web. The second part, of course, is LAN, the LAN connection over the Wi-Fi. It's not always easy to connect your computer at home with LAN, but if you have issues, Teams issue performance, you should try to check that, because we did the test, and really there are some difference, and I will show you that right now. So here we've done that in Boston, another location that we have, and so we wanted to compare what is the difference between a Wi-Fi and a LAN. So if I check here on the mouse again, the green is the Wi-Fi and the LAN is the blue. Well, you can see the green is almost always worse than the blue. Sometimes there's a spike of blue, but more or less we can see green here and not that much blue. And we see that because the statistic shows that the Wi-Fi is almost constantly lower in performance than the LAN. So if you had that at home, I mean, if it's a constant performance between now you are at with the Wi-Fi you are always at 4.2 and with the LAN you are at 4.3, okay, that's fine. The problem is how often will you go under 4? Because it's these moments that are very very painful, especially when you are on the call with customer or this kind of things. So to have the better connection and the better stability, yes, I mean, unfortunately, LAN works, and you should connect on LAN and prefer LAN if you can. We can check the RTT again, and you will see the same thing. The Wi-Fi is always over the LAN, almost always over the LAN, and provide then not as good performance. So it's unfortunate, but it's still the reality. So really, if you have a remote user that are complaining, first things, connect on LAN and check it out. It might solve half of the issues. So let's continue. 5G or 2.4G. So basically on Wi-Fi, there's these two different signal. And the thing is that, well, usually you connect on 5G because, 5 seems better than 2.4. Great. The question is 5 better than 2.4? And the answer is, it depends where you sit compared to your router. The 2.4 is better at going through the wall. And the 5G has a stronger connection, but is not that good as going through the wall. So if your home office is far away from your router, maybe you will have a better connection with the 2.4 than with the 5. And we have done the test as well, and we can see the result over here in Buffalo. Buffalo, another office we have. Let's check again that beautiful mini opinion score. So we put two different robots at Chris' home to check in the same room, and one is 2.4G and the other one is 5. And what you can see is that, the 5 is not that great, and so it really depends. But the 5 has also a lot of spikes. The blue seems a bit more, constant. It provides on average, not maybe on average it's a little bit less good, but there's less spike going down like that. So it's see, again, it really depends what you are looking for. Overall, when we can check at the figure, globally we see more green than blue, meaning that the green is not as good as the blue overall. And there's a simple reason for that. It's just that at Chris, his home office is not right next to his router, so the 5G sometimes struggle to provide the signal. So again, it really depends on your setup, and that's something that you can have your remote user checked if they want to, if they experience some issues. So now, last little point, the 4G. Of course, if really you don't have Wi-Fi, no LAN, but you have 4G or 5G with your phone, it's always a good lifesaver in case of. So last point, how to support your hybrid worker. Well, basically, we have seen to be able to analyze what's going on, you need data. And for that, you need to collect enough statistics to establish a performance baseline to compare normal service and issues, to compare network options, to identify pattern and service degradation, to measure service improvement, introducing change, etc. So you need this data. And to have this data, you need something that produces this data 24 hours 7. And that's how the robot users are working. So basically what you do is that you install GSX robot user at your main offices, selected the VIP user. If they experience issue, you let them run. It will test the service continuously and help you troubleshoot in case of any issue. And with that in place, you have all the data you need to make change, to be proactive, to understand what's going on, to qualify the issue, and of course to then troubleshoot them and improve the overall service quality. So last part, Teams, we've seen its voice, but it's not only voice, of course. And the thing is that Teams is becoming the central point of collaboration, and it's become more and more critical. And Teams doesn't work alone. As you know, for example, the file management system is SharePoint. And then Teams, now people are using the channel, posting documents, using the different document directly in the cloud. So you need to have Teams working, you need to have the voice, great, but you need as well to have that collaboration part, because if it's not working fine, people will do shadow IT. And if they do shadow IT, you're at security risk. So all of that shows that you need to have Teams working not only for voice but everything. You need to monitor it to make sure that everything is working fine, and to always deliver the best possible service quality for your user. And so we have seen the voice a bit, but if you can check here, that's our real-time data. So we can see Teams, OneDrive. So it's more, this view is real-time. It's more for your NOC to make sure like everything right now is working fine. We can see here on the Team Advanced that the robots, they are doing other things. They are testing the connection time, they are creating channel, they are posting a message to channel, uploading file, downloading file, search for user, check the present, perform instant messaging. So they are really using Teams exactly as a user would do on the voice, but also on the overall collaboration side. And of course, enable you to check what's going on, to check the different, compare the different offices, see if you have any kind of issue, be proactive, and always deliver the best possible service. So we have the Team Advanced, we have Teams. We check as well some network parameter. We do OneDrive, we do Exchange. I mean, everything we have seen on Teams, we are doing as well on the other workload of Office 65 in order for you to have an overall view on the service quality delivered by Office 65 to your user. So it's time to conclude. We've seen today how to optimize the Microsoft Teams performance for your user, whether they are at their home or at the office. And we've seen as well that it's very important for the enterprise to keep an eye on the overall service delivery for Teams, but also for OneDrive, for Exchange, etc. So I hope that this session was interesting for you. Thank you again for your attention. And you can contact us if you have any question or if you want more information. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.